What's up? I'm here with Chad Grubbs, the owner of Potts Meats, a USDA butcher and grower of beef. And today we're talking about all the cuts that you don't know about and how you can prepare them. You probably eat a ton of beef. You probably eat fillets, ribeyes, New York strip, brisket, all the cuts that you've probably known about or you heard about growing up, like the chuck roast. But there's a lot of cuts that you don't know about that are really good and actually really inexpensive. I've got my butcher friend here, Chad, and we are gonna talk about all these different cuts for you. So what are some of these things? We put them all on the table here, and these are some things that I see that nobody buys from me for some reason, but you and I eat this. So What are some customary cuts that everybody knows that I didn't mention? And then what's different about these?
Okay, so I mean, of course, everybody knows ribeye, New York strip, filet, tri-tip is a big thing. But then there's all these other cuts that, to be a responsible butcher and a responsible consumer that wants to utilize the whole cow, we need to learn how to cook, and they're really good. So flat iron steaks. Second most tender cut of meat in the beef. This comes from the top blade, so it's on top of the shoulder blade, on top of the chuck. There's a real thick piece of sinew that runs through there. We take out, very good cut of meat, cook it like a ribeye, and it's awesome.
So you can just grill that?
You can just grill this one. Just grill this one, cut it across the grain, so don't slice it this way. When you get done cooking it, go that way.
So like a skirt steak or a flank steak against the grain, and then you can grill that to what, medium rare?
Medium rare.
Okay.
And then also remember, when you're cooking steak on the grill, let it rest half of the amount of time it took to cook it. So if you leave it on the grill 10 minutes, let it rest for 5 minutes before you slice it. That'll help the juices reconstitute through the meat. You don't lose all of the juice. Best way to cook a steak.
So hey, real quick, one tip, anytime I've been cooking steak, if I want to like feel the steak, I always cook to feel when I'm barbecuing, and I go like medium rare, medium well, and well done. So if you feel this muscle right here as you're touching your fingers, this is what I was always taught when cooking. If it feels like that of the steak, this is the different temperature that you're cooking to.
Yep, so. And actually every steak chef in the world is taught that trick. All right, so cube steak. This is a cut of meat that comes from the rear quarter, the hind, that big chunk of meat in the back. And we slice it down to about 4 ounces. We run it through a tenderizer to break apart some of those meat fibers. This is really good for like Swiss steak, country fried steak, steak and gravy. You want to cook this one low and slow with some moist heat. Get it tender, and this is a great wintertime meal that I love.
So the cube steak is like when I was growing up, when I would have chicken fried steak.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. So like breaded, breaded and fried.
Yep.
And then when I cut it open, I thought it was chicken, but it was steak.
Right.
Beef. So this is what I had growing up, and then some white gravy on top that my grandmother used to make. It was so good. Yep. So cool.
And then I'm going to go to one of my favorites that hardly anybody has ever heard of. This is called a Terrace Major. That's the name of the muscle. So you can see it there. This comes from under where the flat iron comes from. It comes from the other side of the shoulder blade. All it does for the animal is keeps the shoulder blade vertical. It kind of stabilizes that thing. This is one muscle. I love it. One of my favorite cuts of meat. You want to grill this up. I'm a rare to medium rare guy. This guy needs to be medium rare plus just a little bit. And let it rest. Again, slice it across the grain. This has got great beef flavor, great tenderness. I love this cut of meat, and it is super rare because there's only 2 of these per beef. That's it, that's all you get. And that's why it's hardly ever in the market. This usually goes in the butcher's pocket before he gets home.
Yeah, I've never seen this before you dropped it off, and I was like, what do I do with this, Chad? So there you go. So grill it, slice it against the grain, medium rare to medium.
Yep.
Cool.
And then we're gonna step out of a cut of meat and go to something that some people kind of don't really know what to do with, is beef oxtail. Beef oxtail is the long lost soup of everybody. This is my favorite thing to make beef soup out of, or beef stew. And low and slow in a crock pot, or you can, if you don't have the time, we do it in an Instapot sometimes. Potatoes, carrots, some beef stock. This thing is great. So much collagen in there, so rich, so hearty. If you haven't tried beef oxtail, absolutely try beef oxtail. And if you've got a Jamaican friend, you need to have his grandmother cook it because they do it better than anybody.
So that's the tail of the cow.
That's the tail of the cow. That's the tail of the cow.
And there's one of these that comes out of each.
That's one entire cow.
Cool. And this is $7.70 here.
Yep.
So
great value. Yep. Great value. Then I'm going to go to I've got top 5 steaks that's in my back pocket. Terrace Major is one. This is another one, the Denver steak. Comes from the same area, comes from the chuck. It's actually the cap that goes over that chuck muscle. A lot of fat, very rich steak. It does very good, rare to medium rare. Grill it, hot, fast, sear it, let it rest, and it is great. I love it. It's one of my favorites. So that's the Denver steak. Next, Delmonico. So a Delmonico is also known as the poor man's ribeye. It comes from the same area as the ribeye. I think it has more, I know it has more flavor than a ribeye. It's one of my go-tos. We eat a ton of Delmonico steaks in my house. So I would definitely recommend this. If you're thinking about stepping outside the box, this would be one of the first ones I would try.
So I see Delmonico steaks on the menu at like higher end restaurants.
Yep.
So I know I've paid a lot of money for Delmonico steaks. You're saying that they're like a lower quality than ribeye or just as good?
Okay, so when we get into just as good and everything, it depends on how you're rating steaks. If you're just going based completely off tenderness, then a Delmonico, you're gonna sacrifice a tad of tenderness from a ribeye, but flavor and eatability is off the chart compared to ribeye. So a lot more beef flavor, a lot more eatability. There's a lot more edible meat there than you would get in the same size ribeye.
So by weight, you're paying more for the ribeye because it comes with a lot of fat,
right?
Whereas you're getting more beef for your value here.
Right.
And then how is that different than the chuck eye steak or the chuck tender steak?
So a chuck tender steak is, so a chuck tender is where the flat iron comes from the bottom part of the shoulder blade. The chuck tender comes from the top part of the shoulder blade. It is probably, as far as steaks that come out of the chuck, that's probably the lowest quality steak. Got a lot of flavor, not a lot of fat, almost zero fat. That's why it's actually called a mock tender. If I cut it, it looks like a filet, but fairly tough, but not a bad steak. I mean, it's one of those that if I'm really wanting to get outside the box and try something different, a chuck tender, but it's totally different than a chuck tender.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
Yeah, so now we're gonna talk about 2 steaks at once because they're like cousins. They come from the same area. You've got the sirloin steak or top sirloin. This is one, if you talk about the big 4, as far as ribeyes, New York strip, filet, this would be the leanest of the cuts. Some people are big sirloin fans. It's got a little more flavor, beefy flavor than a ribeye. Sacrifice a little bit of tenderness, still a great cut. The Picana steak is one, I call it the sirloin's better brother. This is actually the cap that covers the sirloin. This is one of my favorite steaks. Brazilian steakhouses use this a lot. Really good medium rare, hot, fast, slice it. It is great. We had a hard time in our shop selling these for a long time. I got some people hooked, and now we got people that will come in and buy every Picana that we have in the house. Great steak to get outside of the normal ribeye. I love them.
When I started selling your beef here at Hidden Gem, I had a Brazilian guy come and buy all of it. And then other people started finding out about it, and now I can't really keep it in stock. If you look at it, you can see it's not have a lot of fat on the steak. There's this fat cap on the outside. So if you've ever been to a Brazilian steakhouse, they'll grill it and then they cut it into pieces and put it on the skewer. Yeah. Have you ever seen that fat cap on the skewer with the pieces sticking out? That's a Picana steak. So every Brazilian knows about this, and nobody here in our farm, at least until now.
Yep, and now we're gonna talk about the short rib. So short ribs is one of those things that people are scared of because they're somewhat difficult to cook. Some people do a really good job with these on the smoker. My go-to is in a Dutch oven. So we sear these in a Dutch oven, pull them out, deglaze with some wine or any kind of liquid you want to, beef stock in there, some tomato puree, your vegetables, put this back in, put the lid on it, put it in the oven, and let it go low and slow, braise this, and I'm telling you, this is great if you give it time. But it takes time. You're not going to decide at 4 o'clock in the afternoon we're having short ribs for dinner, but if you decide that morning we're having short ribs, people will love it. It is great, super rich. If I go to a restaurant that offers beef short rib, I'm ordering it because if they've done it right, you can't beat it.
I'm ordering it after I ask them how they cook it.
Yes,
so
right.
There's a red wine braise that I do, and then I also have an Asian braise that I do. I'd highly recommend. I'll put it in the description. There's Emeril Lagasse did this Asian beef short rib that it's my go-to now. It's soy sauce, hoisin sauce, orange juice, It's amazing. And what you need to do is get the liquid up over the meat and make sure it's all submerged, and then you're in the oven for 2 or 3 hours. Or for me, I do it in my Instapot in about 45 minutes to an hour. So get the pressure cooking in there. Then I do some orange zest on top, some diced green onions, that over top of the rice. And then what you do is you reduce the sauce. So after that, you strain the sauce out, and then you just reduce it to make it pretty thick, and then you have a nice sauce. This was my first ever piece of beef and food in a Michelin-starred restaurant. It was to die for. And since then, I've been trying to perfect it, and I think I finally got it. Emerald's recipe is awesome. If you don't want the red wine braise, then go the Asian route, and I'll share it in the description.
All right, and the last thing we have here is a sirloin tip roast. So the sirloin tip comes from like the thigh of the animal right here. So one thing that will dictate tenderness is how much the muscle is used. This muscle is used a lot, so not super tender, but the thing about it is the more it's used, the more flavor it has. So this thing is super flavorful. You just have to treat it in such a manner to make a pot roast. So you cook this as a pot roast, low and slow, shreds apart, put it over mashed potatoes, put it over mashed turnips, and this is out of this world. So chuck roast is my favorite roast, but value-wise, the sirloin tip is a better value. It's more eatability, less connective tissue in there, and so you buy this and you're gonna be able to eat most all of this will end up on the plate. Sirloin tip is kind of I guess the lost gem. You know, it does have some fat in there, but I recommend that for pot roast for sure. All right, so I saved 2 things for last that I don't know if we call them a cut of meat, but I believe hold keys to health that will help you out more than anything you could do today. And that is organ meat and collagen. So collagen, beef soup bones. So today we have been told in America that, you know, boneless, skinless, all this stuff. We're not eating any collagen. This right here, we have a recipe. I'll tag it to your stuff on making your own beef stock. Super simple. I love it. I drink it every day. Helps with collagen, helps your joints, helps your skin, and it's super cheap to do, and your family will thank you for it. But beef soup bones, great value, great way to add into your health. Another thing is beef liver. I know everybody's like, ooh, that's gross. Beef liver, great source of iron, great source of CoQ10. It will help the absorption of different minerals and vitamins in your body. There's different ways that you can prepare it, but one of the best ways, if you want to get beef liver into your diet, is you take this home and you cut it into little pill-sized portions, freeze it, put it in a Ziploc, take it like medicine, get 2 ounces a week, and you will see a difference, I promise. Add beef liver and add some soup bones, some stock into your life, and it will absolutely show up in your health.
So that beef liver that you're talking about cutting it up raw and put it in the freezer?
Absolutely.
Okay, so eat it raw.
Eat it raw.
Okay, there you go.
Yep.
First I heard of that, but I'm doing it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep. Love it. Okay, so there you go. There's the hidden gem cuts of the beef. I hope you guys noticed that hidden gem in there. And all of those things are available right here at the farmer's market that we have. Every Saturday right now, 11 to 2, we do a farmer's market here in Spring Hill, Tennessee. If you're local and you're watching this, come see us, tell your friends about it. And if you're not local, make a trip out to Spring Hill, Tennessee and come see us. All of Chad's information for Potts Meats, if you guys want to order a half a cow, a whole cow, go see the farm, things like that, we'll put that in the description too. But follow along with us for more tips, tricks, all these things. We're going to be sharing a lot more information. And if you love this video, subscribe and share with your friends. We would love to get the word out of all of these different cuts. So if you don't live here in Spring Hill, you can support your local farmer, your local grower, your local butcher, and go buy these cuts from them. They're value cuts. They're really incredible to eat. And you don't just have to go buy the $20 a pound stuff or the $28 or $30 a pound stuff. You can actually get some of these cuts that are really good, cheaper for your family, and also help the farmer get into the next cow and the next cow after that. Chad, anything that I missed?
That's the one thing I want to say is this is the best way to be a part of utilizing the whole animal is learning how to cook these other cuts of meat so that the farmer can market that entire cow and you get to take part in some cuts that you normally wouldn't, and you realize how much you love them, and you'll be back for more.
All right, hit the like and subscribe button right now just to help us out, give us a boost, and we'll see you on the next video.